Ethan Harper never imagined that something as small and seemingly innocent as a pair of red high heels could turn his entire life upside down. For 21 years, he believed he understood his wife, her tastes, her boundaries, her insecurities, her comfort zone. Laura was the kind of woman who preferred flat shoes, quiet colors, and predictable routines. She used to laugh at the idea of stepping into anything that might slow her down or draw attention to her legs. High heels are a trap, she often joked. They're for women who want to impress someone. So the first time Ethan saw those bright, blood-red stilettos on her feet as she headed out the door, it struck him like an unexpected cold wind. He stood there, one hand on the doorframe, watching her wobble slightly as she adjusted the strap. The shoes were new, unmistakably expensive. Definitely not her style. New shoes, he had asked, trying to keep his voice light. Laura didn't look at him. Just something I needed for work meetings. You know how it is. But Ethan didn't know. Not really. Because Laura worked at a nonprofit organization, buried in spreadsheets, budget approvals, and community outreach programs. There had never been a dress code. There had never been a reason to dress up. Yet there she was, red heels, fitted blazer, blouse a little too silky, perfume a little too bold. And she was smiling in a way Ethan hadn't seen in years. Not at him. Not for him. Just smiling. From that moment on, the small changes that Ethan had ignored suddenly stitched themselves into a pattern he was terrified to acknowledge. Late meetings, weekend projects, a sudden interest in makeup tutorials, a gym membership she didn't tell him about for 6 weeks, a shift in her phone habits, silent mode, face down, new password. And of course, Martin Kellerman, her boss, charismatic, divorced, well-dressed, always so gentle with his words. Ethan never liked the man, but he tolerated him because Laura respected him. At least that's what he thought. The more he watched her, the more Ethan felt like a stranger in his own home. Their daughter, Lily, 18 and too stressed with college exams to notice much, didn't see the warning signs at first. Or maybe she didn't want to. She had always adored her mother too deeply, too blindly. But Ethan couldn't shake the growing ache in his chest. The ache of a man who knows he's losing something but can't quite prove why. One night, after Laura left for what she claimed was a team celebration dinner, Ethan followed her. He hated himself for doing it, but he hated the uncertainty even more. He stayed far enough behind not to be noticed and watched as she pulled into a quiet suburban neighborhood he didn't recognize. Not a restaurant, not an office, a house that belonged to Martin Kellerman. He saw her walk up to the door, saw the porch light turn on, saw Martin greet her, too warmly, too comfortably, too knowingly. He didn't see anything else because he forced himself to drive away before the truth could stab him completely. But that moment was enough to ignite something dark and trembling inside him. That night, Ethan barely slept. His mind replayed everything he'd seen, everything he'd suspected, everything he'd tried to deny. He thought of confronting Laura, but how could he when she'd grown so skilled at spinning explanations? She would call him paranoid. She would deflect. She would cry. And he would soften. He always softened when she cried. He needed proof. He needed clarity. He needed something undeniable. The next day, still raw and shaking, Ethan did something reckless, something he never imagined himself doing. Early in the morning, before the sun rose, he walked outside and quietly let the air out of Laura's tires. Not all the way, not dangerously, just enough to force her to ask someone for help. He needed to see who she would call, needed to know where she would turn. But she didn't call road assistance. She didn't call him. She didn't call anyone. She simply came back inside 20 minutes later, flustered and annoyed, keys in hand. "Someone must have messed with my tires," she muttered. "I'll take an Uber. Do you want me to look at them?" Ethan offered. "No." She snapped a little too quickly. "I'm already running late." She rushed out the door. But it wasn't until after she left that Ethan noticed something that made his skin crawl. Her work bag, laptop, and files she always carried to the office were all still in the living room. She wasn't going to work. She hadn't even tried to pretend convincingly. That was the moment Lily, their daughter, walked in. She walked toward the window, looked at the driveway, then at her father. "Mom said someone slashed her tires," she murmured. "Do you believe her?" Ethan didn't know what to say. He couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. He couldn't say that he was the one who created the situation. He couldn't break her heart without proof. He couldn't explain something he didn't fully understand himself. So he simply said, "I don't know what to believe anymore." That day, something broke in their household. Something subtle but irreversible. A fragile understanding dissolved between all three of them, replaced by suspicion, fear, and unspoken guilt. By evening, Ethan made a decision, one that terrified him and yet somehow felt like a breath of fresh air. He walked into a law office the next morning, asked for an appointment, filled out the forms, signed the papers, and began the divorce process. 21 years of memories felt like sand slipping through his fingers, but he couldn't hold on anymore. Not when Laura kept slipping away, emotionally and physically. The attorney, a calm middle-aged woman named Margaret Vale, had watched him quietly as he explained everything. His suspicions, his fears, his shame for letting emotions push him into odd decisions like the tires incident. When he finished speaking, Margaret folded her hands. "Ethan," she said softly, "I've handled hundreds of divorces, and I can see it clearly. You're not divorced from your wife yet, but she is already divorced from you." Those words cut deeper than any truth Ethan had admitted to himself. He drove home in silence. The house felt suffocatingly quiet. For a moment, he wondered if he was overreacting, if maybe Laura was innocent, if maybe he had made a mistake, if maybe their marriage still had a chance. So he tried one last time. He invited her for dinner, just the two of them. He suggested they go somewhere they used to love, a lakeside restaurant they hadn't visited in years. He even made a reservation. She didn't hesitate. She didn't think. She didn't offer softness or nostalgia. "I can't," she said abruptly. "I have work, and Lily needs help with her applications. Why are you acting so clingy lately?" Clingy. The word slapped him. He didn't say anything after that. He simply nodded, walked away, and closed himself in his office, letting the silence swallow him whole. Later that evening, Lily knocked on his door. She sat beside him and looked into his tired, defeated eyes. "Dad, what's wrong? Please tell me." He told her everything. Not the tire part, but the shoes, the meetings, the house, the lies. To his surprise, Lily didn't immediately defend her mother. Instead, she looked conflicted, fragile, uncertain. I never saw anything," she whispered. "But I don't know, Dad. Mom's been different. She's been distant. Maybe you're right." For a moment, Ethan felt a strange mixture of relief and grief. At least he wasn't alone anymore. At least someone saw the reality he'd been drowning in. But the illusion of solidarity shattered the next week when a sheriff knocked on the door and handed Ethan a restraining order, a document filled with accusations so vile he felt physically sick while reading them. Abuse, violence, aggression, child endangerment, all lies, all invented, all designed to give Laura leverage in court. And filed by Laura Harper, the sheriff clarified. The world went silent. He couldn't hear Lily's gasp. He couldn't feel his own pulse. He couldn't process that the woman he had loved for more than 2 decades had turned him into a monster on paper. He looked at the signatures, the legal phrasing, the cold paragraphs describing him as a threat to his own family. He felt as though someone had driven a knife straight into his ribs. How could she? He tried to whisper, but the words disintegrated. Lily cried openly, trembling. She wouldn't do this, she kept saying, but her voice betrayed doubt she couldn't hide. And that was only the beginning of the unraveling. Laura moved out the next day, taking Lily with her. She left Ethan in a half-empty home filled with fading memories and choking silence. The accusations spread quickly, neighbors whispering, co-workers distancing themselves, friends sending polite but cold texts. Ethan's job froze his access to accounts pending investigation. His reputation plummeted overnight. He was instructed to take temporary leave. He barely spoke, barely ate, barely existed. His home became a ghost house, his life a cracked mirror. Every time he thought it couldn't get worse, the universe proved him wrong. Because soon after, he learned that Lily had confronted Laura, and Laura had twisted everything again. The lies piled up. The distance grew. And one night, during a heated confrontation, Lily snapped. She shouted, accused, pushed, and Laura only laughed, along with Martin, who now seemed to be very comfortably present in her life. That was the night their daughter realized her mother was not the woman she thought she was. That was the night Lily finally took Ethan's side. But it was already too late. The legal machinery was in motion. The accusations were filed. The divide was carved deep. And Ethan Harper had no idea that the storm ahead would be far darker, far deadlier, and far more twisted than a simple affair. Because secrets like Laura's never stay buried. And soon, people would begin to die because of them. When Emma finally returned home, the door slammed behind her as if fate itself wanted to put an end to everything. But there was no ending, only an ellipsis pulsing in her temples, sinking deeper with every step she took. The house was empty, physically, but emotionally it was crowded. Crowded with ghosts. Ghosts of mistakes, of words left unsaid, of choices she made, or thought she made. She walked through the rooms as if searching for someone, or something, maybe a sign that all of this was just a nightmare, a twisted illusion, a trap. But in the living room, there was only an envelope. Thin, white, and on it, someone's handwriting she recognized instantly, even after 1,000 years. For Emma. Open only when you're ready. Her hands trembled. Ready? Ready for what? She sank down onto the couch, the envelope shaking between her fingers. She tore it open in one sharp motion, afraid she might hesitate if she didn't. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter took 3 pages. The photograph only one. But that single image was enough to tilt her entire world off its axis. In the photo stood a man. That man, the one she had sworn never to think about again, the one she had tried to erase from her memory, as if that were possible. He stood beside a hospital room door, and inside the room was a woman lying under an 4-drip. Frail, exhausted, but alive. Her mother. The same mother Emma had believed dead. For the last 5 years. A roaring sound filled her ears. Pain throbbed. Her throat dried so fast she felt like she had swallowed dust. She didn't even notice she was already holding the letter, crushing the paper between her fingers. Emma, I couldn't tell you earlier. I had no right and no choice. Your mother is alive. She's been under protection all this time. And the reason I disappeared, it wasn't betrayal. It was the only way to keep you alive. The words were neat, calm, but every line sliced in her like a blade. She read them and asked herself, what was real? Who had lied? Who had told the truth? Was it him? Her mother? The world? Or had she lied to herself when she decided she would never trust anyone again? Then came the paragraph that made her breath stop. Your wedding. Your disappearance. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a rescue. And yes, I was there. At the exact moment you thought you lost everything. Her blood went cold. Because if he had been there, then the chaos, the panic, the entire nightmare, it had all been planned. Or at least, someone had expected it. She was a bride, yes, but not in white. She was a pawn on someone's bloody chessboard. Emma looked down at the last line of the letter, and her heart didn't just tighten, it slammed painfully against her ribs. If you want the truth, the real truth, come to the address below. But be warned, after this, you won't be able to go back to your old life. The girl named Emma no longer exists. The address was typed separately, too familiar to be a coincidence. An old farm at the edge of town, a place she had sworn never to return to, the place where everything had started, and maybe where everything would end. Emma rose slowly, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel fear. She felt rage. Pure, sharp, ichiraje. Fine, she whispered. You want a game? Let's play. She grabbed her keys, shoved the letter in one pocket, the photo in the other. She left the house without even closing the door, because deep down, she felt there may not be anyone coming back. The night air hit Emma like a slap, cold, sharp, real. It cut through the haze of confusion and carved out one clear truth. She wasn't going to the farm to find answers. She was going to confront every lie that had ever been told to her. The roads were empty, too empty. As she drove, her mind replayed memories she never asked to remember. Flashes of childhood visits to that same farm, her mother's strange disappearances, the arguments behind closed doors, the shadows that moved in the corners of her life even when she was a child. Shadows she now realized weren't figments of her imagination. They were people, watching, waiting, controlling. By the time she reached the narrow dirt road leading to the farm, her pulse wasn't fear-driven anymore. It was pure adrenaline. Her headlights cut through the darkness like two blades, illuminating the old wooden sign tilted to the side, barely hanging on a rusted nail. Riverside Farm. The name felt like a bruise on her tongue. She parked the car and stepped out. The silence was thick enough to suffocate her, but Emma walked forward without hesitation. Her boots crunched against the gravel. A single dim light glowed in one of the windows of the farmhouse. Someone was inside, someone waiting. The wooden porch creaked under her weight. Every step reminded her she wasn't the same girl who used to run through these fields barefoot. She wasn't innocent. She wasn't naive. She had become something else entirely. Emma lifted her hand and knocked. One time, then twice. The sound echoed far too loudly in the stillness of the night. For a moment, just a moment, she thought maybe no one would answer. But then she heard the lock click, the metal sliding back slowly. The door opened, and there he stood, the man from the photograph. Older than she remembered, more tired, his beard unshaven, his shoulders broader, his eyes holding 1,000 untold truths and 1,000 buried sins. "Emma," he said softly, as if saying her name might break her. She didn't flinch. "Tell me everything." He stepped aside. "Come in. You won't want to hear this standing." She walked past him and entered the living room. Nothing had changed. Same old sofa, same bookshelf, same wooden table where her mother once braided bunches of herbs and whispered warnings Emma didn't understand back then. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself not to react. The man closed the door behind her. He didn't sit. He didn't breathe. He simply looked at her and said, "There was a reason I took your mother away." Emma's jaw clenched. "You didn't take her. You made me believe she was dead." "Yes," he said, "because if you knew she was alive, you would have been in danger too. And they would have come for you long before your wedding." A shiver crawled down her spine. "Who are they?" He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "The people who controlled your family long before you were born. The ones your mother tried to run from. The ones who saw your wedding as the perfect chance to finish what they started." Emma stared at him, unable to tell if he was mad or if everything in her life had truly been a puppet show staged by invisible hands. "And the letter?" she asked. "The photo? Why now?" He hesitated, just a second, but enough for Emma to feel the weight of it. "Because they found us," he said. "And tonight they're coming." The words hit her like a storm. Emma stepped back. "What do you mean?" But then she heard it. A car door slamming outside. Then another. Then footsteps. Many footsteps. The man's face hardened. "Emma, listen to me. It's too late to run, but not too late to fight." Her heart thundered. Her palms grew cold. Her body felt like it didn't belong to her anymore. "What do they want?" she whispered. His eyes darkened. "You." And before she could breathe, before she could scream, before she could even understand, the lights went out. The house plunged into darkness. And the nightmare truly began. The darkness wasn't silent. It breathed. Emma felt it move around her, thick and heavy, like a living thing swallowing the air from her lungs. The boards beneath her feet vibrated with approaching steps, soft, synchronized, deliberate. The man grabbed her wrist. Not violently, urgently. "Don't freeze," he whispered. "I'm not," she lied. He pulled her toward the kitchen just as the front door exploded inward, a deafening crack of splintering wood and shattering hinges. Emma flinched, her body instinctively curling in on itself. Flashlights sliced through the darkness like knives. Voices followed. Male. Cold. Professional. Check every room. She has to be here. Orders are clear. No loose ends. Emma's heart plummeted. They weren't amateurs. They weren't robbers. They were hunting her. Like prey. The man guided her into the pantry and shut the door behind them. The small space was barely large enough for two people. The smell of old spices and dust filled the air. Emma could hear her pulse in her ears, louder than the boots stomping across the wooden floors. "What do they want from me?" she whispered, trying to keep her voice from trembling. The man leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Not what? Who? She stiffened. He continued, his voice just a breath. They want your mother. And since they can't find her, they'll settle for her bloodline. Emma felt her stomach twist painfully. My bloodline? Yes. She stumbled back a step, her voice barely audible. Then why did you bring me here? I didn't, he said. You came because you needed the truth. I wasn't sure you'd believe me. But now, the footsteps were getting closer. He reached into his jacket and pressed something cold and metallic into her palm. A small, compact gun. Emma stared at it, as if it were a foreign object. I don't know how to use this. You won't need to, he said. Not unless I fail. That did nothing to calm her. The pantry door rattled just slightly. Someone had brushed past it. Emma stopped breathing. For 5 agonizing seconds, they stood frozen in absolute silence. Then the footsteps moved away. The man exhaled, but Emma's panic didn't subside. Tell me the truth, she whispered. Why now? Why did you send me that letter today of all days? He hesitated, and that hesitation made her feel sick. Because I knew, he said quietly, that once they started moving, they wouldn't stop. And I couldn't let you live your entire life based on a lie. You deserve the truth before. Before what? He didn't answer. A sudden crash came from the hallway, followed by a voice. I found something. Emma's blood went icy. The man closed his eyes for a moment, as if making peace with something inside him. Emma, he said, if they break this door, run. She shook her head violently. I'm not leaving without answers. You won't have a choice. Boom. The pantry door splintered. A boot kicked it in. Light blinded her. A man in tactical gear filled the frame, lifting a weapon, but he didn't get the chance to fire. Her protector moved first. One strike, swift, brutal, colliding with the intruder's throat. A gunshot rang out, shattering jars of spices behind them. Emma screamed, ducking as glass exploded around her. Go, the man shouted. More footsteps. More voices. Second target confirmed. Take them alive if possible. Move in. He grabbed Emma's arm, pulling her through the back of the pantry, where a narrow service door led outside. She stumbled after him, clutching the gun, though she still wasn't sure she could ever pull the trigger. Cold night air hit them as they burst outside, but the relief was short-lived. 3 figures were already moving toward them from the barn. Emma froze like a trapped animal. The man shoved her behind him, and the nightmare continued. Shots echoed. Screams followed. The world blurred. She ran when he told her to run. She ducked when he shouted to duck. And for the first time in her life, she realized. She didn't know this man at all. He wasn't who she thought. He wasn't who he pretended to be. He was something much, much darker. And she wasn't sure if he was saving her or delivering her straight into the hands of her enemy. The night swallowed them whole. Emma's legs were numb from running, her lungs burning as she stumbled across the uneven field behind the old farmhouse. The man stayed ahead of her, moving with terrifying precision, scanning every shadow as though danger lived in all of them. Don't look back, he ordered. Of course she did. Behind them, 3 silhouettes moved across the field, flashlights sweeping like hunting spotlights. Voices carried through the cold air. She's running toward the woods. Cut her off, north side. Bring the asset in alive. Asset. The word made Emma feel sick. What do they want with me? She gasped, barely able to speak. He didn't slow. The truth. And once you know it, you'll understand why they can't let you walk away. That doesn't help. It isn't meant to. They reached the edge of the trees. The forest loomed like a black wall, swallowing all sound. The man pulled her in, pushing branches aside as he led her deeper into the darkness. Emma stumbled over roots, clutching the gun he had given her. Her hands trembled so violently she feared she'd accidentally shoot herself. Stop, he said suddenly. She froze. The forest around them was silent, too silent. He crouched, examining the ground with quick, precise movements. What are you doing? She whispered. Counting time. For what? He rose slowly. For how long until the net closes? He pointed through the trees. Emma followed his hand, and her stomach dropped. A line of faint red lights flickered between the branches. Lasers. A perimeter. They're surrounding the woods, she whispered, horrified. Yes, he said. That's what they do. They don't improvise. They tighten. Emma felt her throat close. We're trapped. No, his voice darkened. They're trapped with us. Before she could ask what he meant, the snap of a twig cut through the night. He moved before she even processed the sound, grabbing her and pushing her behind a tree. A flashlight beam swept past them. A soldier stepped into view. Emma held her breath. Unit 3, I have movement on the west side, the soldier said into his comm, possibly both targets. The man's whisper brushed her ear. When he steps forward, turn away. What? What? Don't watch. But she did. The soldier took one step. 2. 3. The man sprang like a shadow breaking free. A muffled struggle. A choked gasp. A body collapsing silently onto the forest floor. Emma pressed her hand to her mouth. She didn't know whether to run from him or cling to him. He knelt beside the fallen soldier, stripping the vest off the body and shoving it into Emma's hands. Put on. Her voice was a broken whisper. I can't do this. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. Eyes she realized were not the eyes of a stranger. They were familiar. Too familiar. Emma, he said, his voice steady and low. You don't have to be brave. You just have to listen. And survive. She was shaking so hard she thought her bones would rattle. He softened just slightly. Your mother did this better than you, he muttered. But she had time to learn. Emma stiffened. My mother? What do you know about her? He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her deeper into the forest. The weight of the vest felt suffocating. The gun felt impossibly heavy. Branches whipped past her face. Mud splashed beneath her shoes. You said you knew her, Emma said, breathless. What did she do? Why are they after me? You'll know soon enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get until we reach the drop point. Drop point? She cried. What drop point? He stopped so abruptly that she nearly crashed into him. He turned to her fully for the first time. Emma, you're not running from your mother's past. He paused, his expression carved from something cold and full of regret. You're running from your own. Her breath caught. My own? I don't understand. You will, he said, because the people chasing you aren't here to kill you. Her blood ran cold. What are they here for? He looked at her with an expression she had never seen on any human face. To bring you back. For a long moment, Emma couldn't breathe. Bring her back? Back where? Back to what? The man saw the terror spread across her face, and for once, he didn't hide from it. Emma, he said quietly, you were never supposed to grow up as an ordinary girl. Your mother hid you for a reason worth running from for 20 years. Her throat tightened painfully. My mother was a school teacher, she said. She wasn't. She wasn't whatever you're implying. His expression darkened with something between sorrow and guilt. Your mother was the most valuable intelligence operative in the Western Hemisphere, the best they ever produced. But she defected, and she took something with her. He stepped closer. She took you. Emma staggered back as if struck. No, she whispered. No, that's ridiculous. I'm just ordinary. He shook his head. You've never been ordinary. You've been protected, sheltered, hidden. Why me? She choked out. What could they possibly want from me? Everything, he said. The training you never completed. The abilities you don't know you have. The information encoded in you before you were even born. Her knees nearly buckled. My mother would never. She wouldn't let anyone. She didn't know, he said. She found out too late. The forest suddenly erupted with voices. Closer now. They were almost surrounded. Move, he ordered, grabbing her hand and pulling her uphill through the thick brush. Emma stumbled after him, her mind spinning, her heart tearing itself apart. When they reached the ridge, she collapsed against a fallen tree, trembling uncontrollably. I can't, her voice broke. I can't outrun this. I can't fight them. I can't even understand what's happening. He crouched in front of her, placing his hands on hers. For the first time, he looked less like a weapon and more like a man. You don't have to understand everything, he said softly. Just one thing. What? She whispered. That I'm not your enemy. Her breath caught. I know you don't believe me yet. I know I've done nothing to earn your trust. But your mother asked me for one thing before she died. Emma's heart slammed into her ribs. My mother is dead. He closed his eyes for a moment. Pain flickered across his face. She died protecting you, he said. And her last words were, when they come for her, don't let them take her alive. Emma's whole body went numb. A sob tore out of her chest, raw and broken. She knew this would happen. Yes, he said, and she knew I wouldn't let them touch you. Emma's vision blurred with tears. The crushing weight of grief and fear wrapped around her like chains. Why you? She whispered. Who are you? He hesitated, then finally spoke the truth he'd been withholding. My name isn't Daniel, he said. Your mother never told you my real connection to her. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small silver pendant, bent, scratched, old. He placed it gently in Emma's trembling hand. Inside was a faded photograph. A woman Emma recognized. Her mother, younger, smiling. And beside her, Daniel, younger too, holding a baby. Her. Emma's breath collapsed. You. Yes, he said. You were my daughter long before you were their target. Her world shattered into a million pieces. But she didn't have time to pick them up. Shouts echoed on the ridge. Flashlights flickered through the trees. They had seconds left. He stood and pulled her up. His voice was steady now, deadly calm. We're not running anymore. Daniel, she choked. No, he cut her off gently. You don't have to call me that. Emma's voice trembled. Dad. For a moment, just one, everything softened. Then the forest exploded with light as armed operatives poured over the ridge. Her father stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. The first gunshot tore through the night. The final confrontation had begun. The gunfire cracked through the forest like lightning, splitting the sky. Emma flinched, dropping to her knees as dirt exploded around her. Her father, Daniel, the man she had only just begun to accept as her own, moved like a force of nature. Every shift of his body was purposeful, deadly, trained beyond anything she could comprehend. He fired 2 quick shots. 2 figures fell. The rest hesitated. Emma, he said without looking back, if I fall, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back. I'm not leaving you, she cried, grabbing his arm. He glanced back, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. Your mother died to give you a chance. I'm not letting that sacrifice be wasted. Before Emma could answer, another wave of agents surged from the trees. Daniel pushed her aside, taking cover behind a fallen trunk. Bullets tore into the bark. The night smelled of smoke and cold metal. Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought her ribs would crack. Then, a deep rumble rolled across the hills. A helicopter's spotlight cut through the treetops. Emma froze. No, Daniel whispered. They brought an extraction team. He crouched beside her, gripping her shoulders. This is your last moment to choose. Choose what? She choked out. How you want to live. His voice was low, urgent, trembling. Running from them forever, or surviving long enough to expose everything. Emma swallowed hard, her throat raw with fear and heartbreak. Ow, she whispered. How can we win against them? Daniel reached into his jacket and pressed a small black drive into her palm. Your mother hid this, he said. Every classified file she stole. Every secret they were willing to kill for. Proof of everything. Enough to take down the entire program. Emma stared at the tiny drive that suddenly felt heavier than a mountain. But why give it to me? She whispered. I'm not special. A soft, broken smile touched his lips. You're the only one they never saw coming. Shouts drew closer. The helicopter's blades thundered overhead. Daniel stood, pulling Emma behind him one last time. Stay low, he ordered. He fired again, precise, controlled. 2 more fell, but there were too many. A sharp crack echoed. Daniel staggered. Emma screamed. He fell to one knee, pressing a hand to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. No. Emma crawled to him, grabbing his face. Stay with me. Please. His eyes softened. Emma, listen to me. The agents formed a semicircle around them, weapons raised. I'm proud of you, he whispered. More than you'll ever understand. Don't say goodbye, she pleaded, shaking her head furiously. Don't you dare. His fingers brushed her cheek. I won't, not really. I'll be with you every step you take. A final breath, escaped him. His body slumped forward into her arms. Emma's scream echoed through the forest, raw and unfiltered grief cutting through the night. The spotlight steadied on her. A voice boomed from the helicopter. Emma Ward, drop the drive and surrender. She rose slowly, tears streaking her face, Daniel's body still warm beneath her hands. She closed her fist around the drive, and something inside her hardened. No, she said. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't fear. It was resolve. She stepped over her father's body and faced him with eyes that no longer trembled. You want the truth? She shouted. You'll get it. Every last person in this country will know what you've done. Emma, don't move. But she already had. She turned and sprinted into the woods, bullets tearing through leaves behind her. Branches whipped her face. Her lungs burned, but she kept going. She didn't look back. Not once. Because she finally understood what her parents died for. Not secrecy, not espionage, freedom. The news exploded worldwide. Whistleblower exposes secret intelligence program. Government scrambles after leak. Anonymous source reveals 20-year operation targeting civilians. Though Emma never revealed her real identity, she stayed one step ahead of every pursuit. The drive had changed everything. It was unstoppable. In a small, quiet coastal town, under a different name, Emma stood alone on the shore as the sun rose. The wind tugged at her hair. She wore the pendant her father had given her, the one with the faded photo. She touched it gently. Thank you, she whispered. Both of you. The waves washed softly at her feet like an answer. She wasn't running anymore. She was living. For the first time in her life, she was finally free.